For years, China pursued an aggressive industrial strategy aimed at dominating the technologies of the future, from batteries and electric vehicles to telecommunications, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. What many once dismissed as state intervention has helped create some of the world's most powerful industrial champions. Today, Western governments increasingly appear to be adopting parts of that playbook themselves. I'm Johanna Bota, and joining us to discuss whether China has changed the rules of global capitalism is Vincent Deluard, Director of Global Macro Strategy at StoneX. Welcome back, Vincent, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to get right to it. Do you think that China has fundamentally changed the way governments think about industrial policy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rise of the Chinese model of capitalism has led to a rethinking of industrial and trade policy. I mean, in a way, we're really going back to a debate that took place in somewhat similar circumstances in the early 19th century. On the one side, you had the hegemon of the time, the England, under Ricardo, that was arguing for comparative advantage and letting the magic of free trade work. And on either time, in the role of China, we had Germany, which was a rapidly industrializing nation, and who had different needs. And their main economists there were Friedrich List, who argued for a policy that is not dissimilar to what we are seeing in China today, which is some restriction on imports, a kind of state-led investments, and protection from nascent industries. And it worked. I mean, within a 50 years, Germany had overtaken Britain's industrial output and came very close to winning World War One. So in a way, China is really just adopting the old list playbook with similar results.
How successful has China's model actually been?
Well, I mean, of course, there's been misses, but if we look at the aggregate, I mean, it's hard to argue that it's not successful. Um, I mean, we if we look in terms of standard of livings, public investments, this has been really the greatest economic miracle in mankind. If we look specifically at industrial policies, we see it whether it's in rare earth processing, batteries, drone technology, robotics, AI, biotech, where China has caught up, or if not surpassed, some of the most advanced economies. So um, yeah, it has been a success, and I mean the number you see it in the numbers, right? I mean China has $1 trillion current account surplus, which means that its products are desired abroad.
Do you think that the West is now copying parts of China's strategy?
Yes, I mean by the West, I would mostly say the U.S. I mean we're not seeing much out of the EU. It remains mostly um, incantations and hopes that tomorrow will be better than today, but very little practical actions. I mean, it started really this more activist industrial policy started in the Biden years. We had the CHIPS Act that aimed at boosting the U.S. production of semiconductors. Lots of public investment, tax incentives. The IRA tried to do the same thing with batteries and some clean technologies. Now, Trump came back on some of these measures, but doubled down on others. I mean, certainly his trade policy is nothing like what Mr. Ricardo would have argued, and it's very much designed to uh, favor certain sectors and punish others. And we are also seeing much more um, open interventions of government in U.S. business. For example, we saw the government take a stake in Intel, and yeah, basically telling businesses what to do and what not to do, who can export what. So a much greater merging, if you will, of government and private sector interests.
Is it fair to say that the focus, the real competition, has shifted away from military power to technological leadership?
I'm not sure I would say it has shifted because I mean wars have always about technology. I mean, if you go back to the Sparta, Rome, the Portuguese, it's always the nation that was at the technological frontier that could impose its will on others. So that component has always been there. Um, I mean, there's certainly major technological transformation in warfare that happen in short succession. I mean, we see, Ukraine um, able to stop the second most powerful army with drones mostly, and we've seen Iran effectively defeat the most powerful army in the world with the same technology. Um, I think what's happening really is transformation in the relative advantages of attack versus defense. It used to be that with aircraft carriers, you had a some sort of a aircraft carrier nuclear weapons, and that was all you needed, right? Aircraft carrier to control the seas, and nuclear weapons to deter adversaries. Both of these things are coming under pressure, right? The nuclear weapons, like, well, you can't really use them without turning into a monster, and even someone like Putin has not. So how good are they if you can't use them? And then the aircraft carriers cannot really sustain an attack of a barrage of drones. I mean, it's just really the sheer mass of it. So it's not actually, I would say it's almost in a way it's kind of the opposite. It's not necessarily about having the latest technology. It's just to be able to outproduce. That's one thing we see in Iran is I mean the U.S. had the better technology, the THAAD missile systems, and but if you just keep throwing wave after wave of cheap drones, eventually you exhaust your opponent's defense. So it's a combination of some technology, but also industrial capacity, and that's a mix that is very befitting for China. May not always have the best technology, although they're quickly catching up, but they certainly have the industrial capacity.
Okay, one last question. Do you think China can sustain this model indefinitely, or are cracks beginning to emerge?
We'll see. I mean, it's these questions about sustainability. I think is um, a misunderstanding of the nature of life. I mean, life is not sustainable. We are all slowly rotting and dying away. A bicycle that you know moves is constantly falling, and it's the motion of the rider that keeps it. So nothing is ever sustainable. I mean, yes, I think the question is leading towards issues of excessive debt and imbalances and all the things that the economist writes about the Chinese economy and has written about the Chinese economy for the past 20 years to explain why they're not serious and only people who work at the economist understand how an economy should be run. Um, the reality is, yeah, nothing is ever sustainable. I'm not sure that the Western model is all that much more sustainable. We go from one crisis to the next and we figure it out as we go along. My impression is that China has had its big crisis already. I mean, it's been what, almost 10 years now since the real estate sector has been exploding, and the banking sector has had issues. So clearly, we see that there are some issues with its model. But again, there's never a perfect economic model. There's never a perfect solution. It's all a question of goals and constraint. What are the goals of China? It's economic sovereignty, technological catch up, and its constraints are different than other countries. I mean, they have a much bigger population, they have a much higher level of control, so maybe they can handle some of these negative consequences in large part because they're not a democracy. Yeah, I would not rush to claim that this is all a house of cards that's going to fall. I mean, if you go to China, you know see the airports, take the highways, see the fast trains. I mean, whatever happens, these infrastructure will still be there. And I think coming from Europe, it's something that um, we can feel envious of sometimes.
Vincent, thank you again for joining us and for all that insight. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.